Hey everybody, welcome back to the 60 Seconds of Stoicism podcast, the only 60-second podcast on the internet that lasts for a half hour. I am your host, Ryan Lee Mays. I am the author and creator of the Octod program, and this is my wife, Melinda.
Hey guys, Melinda here.
And we are happy to be with you guys tonight and just talk about another venture into Stoicism. So our focus tonight is on two specific words, can't and won't. Those words again, can't and won't. We know them well. We say them all the time, but we use them out of context continually, almost egregiously sometimes, where we say, I can't. Let's define the difference between I can't and I won't. I can't is an impossibility. That means it cannot be done, it cannot be finished, it cannot be accomplished, it cannot be sought through. I can't. Now, that can be two different things. It can be a momentary can't. I can't have dinner with you in Japan right now because I'm in America. Okay, that's just a silly one, but I mean, that's true. I cannot physically do that right now. But there's also the micro. So I call that macro can'ts. Those are big things that we can't do. Micro can'ts. I can't get out of bed. I'm so tired. Okay, that is not a can't. That goes into a won't. So can't is an impossibility, whether it's small or just temporary, or if it's something large or major, it's an impossibility. And won't is a choice. Instead of saying I can't, most of us want to say I won't. I won't get out of bed this morning because I'm tired. Or we say it in another form, I do not want to get out of bed because I'm tired, but it is a choice to do that. So we're doing can't versus won't. The reason why this topic is on the table tonight for Stoicism is one of the major, talking points in behavioral therapy, especially rational motive behavioral therapy, going back to Albert Ellis and Aaron Brooks and just these pioneers of understanding how people react with anxiety and depression, and it's kind of an exposure therapy method. And what they do is they talk about the ABCs. What is the activator for that? What is the thing that's causing you to say, I can't do this, or I won't do this, specifically the won't? And then what is your belief system? And then what are the consequences that can come out of that? And you look at both the worst consequences and the least consequences. And it's kind of almost a premeditatio malorum we talk about in Stoicism, where we think about those things beforehand. But what it does is really helps clear the mind. And so a lot of us say, I can't do this. It's just an impossibility to me right now. But I want to bring up some words of the Stoics, and specifically Epictetus. There's going to be some Rufus and Seneca in here as well, and there's lots of Marcus Aurelius that you can add to this as well. But I want to bring up some points from the Stoics and talk about what it means to say I can't. I am a person that has dealt with depression in their life. When I would say it was about 10 years ago, a major life change happened to me where I am no longer married to the person I used to be married to, and I went through a depression. I went through a very sad time. I went through a time where I did not want to get out of bed. I went through a lot of anxiety of how by myself I was going to take care of everything and I was going to be responsible for everything. And so I went through that. And so I'm speaking to you as a person who's experienced this, not as a person who is looking down on anybody who has these things. And you specifically as well, you've gone through some depression in your life, have you not?
Oh yeah, definitely. Same thing as you, gone through divorce, raising 3 kids on my own with the help of family, but still, just kind of feeling kind of alone. And yeah.
So you understand you understand what that means then, to not want to get out of bed sometimes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Many times. And
you've probably said to yourself, because I know I have, I just can't get out of bed right now. I just need to lay here for a while longer. Like I can't get up. And we can go back to the Marcus Aurelius quote, where he's telling you to get out of bed and go live your life to being a human being, because that's what you're meant to do. Mm-hmm. But looking at it in the context of depression and anxiety, it's a little bit different. But the problem is it goes from a depression to a debilitating disease, to where you cannot function in your own life, you cannot function in society, you cannot function for others, and there has to be a way out of that. And when we get from the I can't to the I won't category, I won't get help, I won't get out of bed, I won't try to better myself, I won't seek professionalism for people to help me, that is where the issue lies. And the Stoics are very clear on that. Depression is horrible. You may have lost somebody in your life, you may have lost a relationship, a job, you may be in the darkest of places right now, but so were the Stoics, and they understood that. Let's just do a quick rundown of the big four. Musonius Rufus, exiled 4 times, basically kicked out of Rome, saying you can't have any of the luxuries of being a Roman citizen. Go fend for yourself because we believe you're doing something that's going against what Rome wants right now. Seneca, same thing, exiled, worked for a murderous emperor, a spoiled brat, someone who eventually hunted him down and had forced him to commit suicide. He didn't personally, Nero didn't personally, but had his soldiers go under false accusations. Marcus Aurelius had been put into power, wars, famine, a very unfaithful wife, multiple children that had died. And then Epictetus, a slave, born a slave, as history has it, had his leg broken by a slave master. Where do you find joy in all those things I just mentioned?
That's got to be really hard.
Right. It is the absolute foundation of depression. It is the absolute foundation of anxiety. And it's not to say that we can't have a little bit of those moments. Those are going to pop up. Anxiety is going to pop up until we can talk ourselves through it and say, okay, I don't need to be anxious about this. Depression may pop up until we can stand back and say, how do I work through these circumstances to make myself happier, make my life better? Mm. But if we are going into the I won't, then we're failures. And I know that's a big slap in the face, but trust me, the finger's pointed at me as much as it is at anybody else. If we go into the I won't get help, I won't seek it, I don't want to, then we have issues. We have issues with that. And so we never ever want to go into those categories. We want to be able to find a way out of that. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to kind of pick apart the argument of I won't. We're going to look at excuses that I've used, that maybe you've used, other people have used. And we're going to run through them through the lens of Stoicism and say, how can we pull ourselves out of this? The first I won't is I won't get help because I'm not important. I don't matter. I am very little in this world. No one cares about me. Epictetus says, first say to yourself what you would be and then do what you have to do. So if you are telling yourself, I am unimportant, nobody cares about me, I am not loved, then that is what you're going to do. That is the company you're going to seek, that misery. But if you tell yourself, I'm worth something, there's effort that's gone into my life, people care about me, people check on me, I get a phone call every now and then you're important. And you're important in more ways than one. You might be important to, other people around you, of course. You might be important to God. You might be important to the people you work with, but you're important. Absolutely important. If you're listening to this podcast right now, I think you are important because you are a contributor to the betterment of the world. We need you. So you're important. You have to start seeing yourself that way. The Stoics understood that they were not more important than other people in their own eyes, but they understood that they had an importance to the people around them. They had jobs to fulfill, they had duties to take out, they had lessons to teach. So you matter. And that might seem very grade school to say that, like I'm standing up in an assembly in front of 6th graders and saying you matter, but no, it's true. You matter. You play a very valid part. And I don't know, what are your takes on feeling importance? Is there a time where you didn't feel important, maybe? And then a time where you said, oh my gosh, I don't know what all these people would do around me without me in their life?
Yeah, I think I've had many thoughts like that until I really sat and thought about, honestly, it was mostly my kids. Thinking about, the times that I've gone through some really, really rough just a really rough patch and just some struggles. And but then I really thought about my kids, like, if I was not here, who's going to take care of them, who's going to help them go forward in life. I honestly, and I struggle with this with my students at school too, but I think sometimes it just takes someone to say, no, you are important. Not even, you don't even have to go into this big old, like, why you're important, but just the fact that you say you're important. Because, even just working with my students, sometimes they're like, no, I'm just, nobody cares. Nobody would really, I had a couple of students say, like, Miss, what would you do if I died? And I was like, oh my gosh.
They threw that out already at this age. So, yeah.
And that was a middle schooler. And I was just like, I would cry and I would miss you. And she was just shocked that I said that. Like, she couldn't even believe that I cared so much for her just because I was her teacher, not like a close family member. But sometimes I feel like it just takes that one person to say, you really do matter and you really do matter to me. I think sometimes it just needs to be heard.
So let's kind of dive into this just a little bit, because that's a pretty big thing. I'm not asking for any personal information or anything of the child, but were they under the age of 16?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're a middle schooler, yeah.
Very young to already have that in your life, and to think about, these kids are kind of on their last chance with school, and they're trying really hard to succeed, and they're struggling, and to ask you that cry for validation. Exactly. Is there someone that cares about me? Oh my gosh, like, that's exactly how a lot of people feel for that. I've asked myself that, if I was gone, would everybody be okay? And that can take us down to such a dark path in life with that. And thank God that you were there to reinforce that for her, that yes, I do care about you, and it would hurt me very much if you weren't here. So you're important. So let's take that excuse off the table now. According to Epictetus, say to yourself what you want to be. I want to be important, and then do what you have to do to show that to everybody else. But more importantly, to show it to yourself. I want to be important. The next one is, people are against me. And that is an excuse that we hear a lot of times in our life, and maybe even said ourselves. I want to do this, but they just try to keep pulling me down. I want to go here, but they say I can't. I want to work at this place, but they don't say I have enough. And we put the blame on other people rather than turning inwardly. Before I even read this quote from Seneca, a quote from Epictetus, it's not about the things that happen to us. It's our interpretations of things. And so we understand that they can't do anything to us that we don't allow to happen to ourselves. So the people are against me argument really does not hold water. It is a big crutch for the I won't that we're talking about. Here's a quote from Seneca. Excellence withers without an adversary. Excellence withers without an adversary. So if you do not have somebody that is making your life tough, if you do not have somebody that is challenging you, if you do not have somebody that is keeping you on your toes, then you're going to wither away. All the good in you is not going to be challenged. It's not going to be kept up to a higher standard. And I think that's really what he's talking about here, is the standard of who you are as a person. You have enemies good. Isn't I believe it's Churchill. I don't want to give a quote without giving it to you, but I believe it was Churchill that said, if you have enemies good, that means you stood up for something in your life. What a powerful phrase that is. It is. It's good that people come against me. It's good that people want this podcast to fail. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just saying, if they do. There's good that people don't like my book that I wrote. There's good that people would argue with me about Stoicism. There's good that people would argue against me about faith or anything else, or psychology. And what that does is it sharpens us. Yeah. It sharpens us with response. It sharpens us with our thinking so that we're prepared to give an answer, which is what Scripture says. Be prepared to give an answer. Be prepared to give a defense. Well, that goes with Stoicism and everything else as well in your life. So it's good that people are against you. When somebody's come up against you in your life, do you feel like it pushes you down, it just tamps you into the ground, or does it motivate you to want to prove them wrong, maybe?
Honestly, I think it depends on the person. I think when it's somebody you don't really know, I think, you kind of want to push back a little bit. I think when it's someone you do know, I think it's a little more personal.
Oh, good point.
And I think it kind of drove me to where I felt just really low and just it's kind of low self-esteem about myself, because like, wow, here's this person that I really care about, and I thought they cared the same, and now they're hurting me. And so I think for me, I think it's more personal with somebody I know than somebody I don't. And I tend to push back harder.
Sure. And a very stoic view on that is to feel sorry for that other person. If you can get to the point where you have that ataraxia built up so much that you're not letting these things penetrate your life, your soul, your being, the things that people say to you and do to you, then you're to a point where you're good. You're feeling good. You're doing the right thing. And now I can feel sorry for that person
Yeah.
that is bringing that against me. Aurelius tells us the best way to get revenge is to not be like our enemy. So if they're sitting there throwing rocks at us verbally and we're just letting them bounce right off of us, I feel sorry for you. That's a waste of your time and effort to come against me.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Epictetus tells us that, if you make fun of me, then I'll say you must not know me very well, or you would have made fun of all the other things about me that you left out. So just having that kind of mindset, it's good that you have some people against you. Doesn't mean that you should do it because you're doing things wrong or you're doing things unlawfully or you're not honoring your duty to be a human and to take care of your fellow man, but to be against you because you have opinions and ideas and things you stand for and that you love and you put your heart in. That's good. So that's no longer an excuse. That is I won't get better because people are against me. That's off the table now. So let's go to the next excuse here. Sorry. Getting better is too hard. It takes too much effort. I am not going to bring up the generational gap right now in the way of thinking because I actually have a very different way of thinking thanks to I'm doing my doctoral studies right now, and we had to do a research project on a video that somebody put out about millennials. And it was back and forth. The comments, we had to research the comments, and it was back and forth, and they were like, yes, that's it. Millennials are terrible workers, and they're whatever, and it's the stereotypes, and the millennials were firing back and saying, you guys are out of touch and out of date. And then one millennial left a comment that I think was so beautiful. The comment was, maybe every generation is bad at some point, and they have to mature into being good people that care about the society they live in. And I said, that's it. You got it. You're absolutely right. So for us to say that we're just a lazy generation, Generation X was lazy, didn't stand for anything, millennials are lazy, Gen Z's lazy, that is a stereotype. But what does exist is there are people in all those generations that say this is too much for me to take on. I'm going to stay in bed because it's easier. I'm going to stay unemployed because I just don't want to deal with the anxiety that I'm going to feel. I don't want to have to confront that when I go out there. I'm not going to talk to the people that maybe I have an issue with right now that's causing me this depression, anxiety, because it's just too hard. I don't want to deal with it. Well, what does Epictetus say? Not only does Epictetus leave a brilliant quote here, but he brings Socrates in it. He says, but what does Socrates say? Just as one person delights in improving his farm and another in his horse, so I delight in attending to my own improvement day by day. So it's not a hard thing. It's actually a joyous, happy, wonderful thing when you get to tend to yourself and make yourself better. It's not too hard. It's because you're looking at it as a chore rather than a joy. I'm telling you right now, I hate going out and lifting weights because it causes pain. I live in a state that's eternally hot, so I'm sweaty after the first 30 seconds. But afterwards, the joy, the feeling, like, oh, man, I feel good right now. I feel relaxed. I don't have anxiety. You like to go for big, long walks. So how do you feel after? What is your thought process before and then after one of your 2 or 3 mile walks?
I mean, just like everybody else, you think about, oh, it's the process of it. It's the getting started. It's the getting started that's harder. But once you get out there and you're breathing in the air and taking in that fresh air, taking those walks and talking and just kind of seeing everyone around you doing this same thing, you start to not feel alone. You start to really enjoy the moment. We start to have really great conversations. We start talking big about future dreams. And then I'm like, man, I really love this. Why don't we do this more often? But I think it's just the getting started. And I think that's the anxiety,
just getting started.
It's getting started.
So you bring up the word anxiety. So before you start, you know, compare your anxiety level there to where you are afterwards. You don't have to get quantify it with an actual number, but where do you feel like your anxiety is before you go on a 3 mile walk, and where do you feel like it is during and after?
I mean, before, yeah, because you're thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna be sore. I have to. You think about the distance that you have to go and the process of that. Like you then you forget to think like, oh, but when I'm in the moment and when you actually get into that moment, like, man, this is not as hard, and you start to feel more energetic. And I feel like for me, it takes depression away and anxiety. And the day that I had, and at the end of that walk, I'm like, wow, like that just I can sleep better. I'm more energetic the next day. And but yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And it takes a lot of commitment to do. I have a friend who she gets up in the morning at 4:30 to go work out at a gym, and she does it because of the feeling she gets afterwards. And it takes dedication and time and sacrifice to be able to do that, but it's worth it to feel good. And then when she can't go, she feels bad. Like I missed it. I missed an opportunity for it. And I totally understand that now. I feel the same way when we miss an opportunity to eat right or to exercise. And it's you just start to rely on those things to help you feel better. So it's not that it's too hard. It's that you're seeing it as a chore rather than seeing the joy afterwards and the accomplishment. We really have to change our way of thinking on that. We have to start somewhere. It's like I love throwing Legos together. It's one of my favorite things. Lego bricks are just like, it's a joy to me to put those together. And I haven't done a lot lately, but you have to start with one brick to put another one on. If you just stand there and look at all the bags of pieces, nothing will ever be accomplished from that. I always like to give the I guess metaphor of moving a house. If I told you I need you to take this entire house and move it 3 feet to the right, you would say that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do it. I can't do that. But if I told you, can you just move one brick from here 3 feet over? You'd say, well, yeah, of course. I can move one. I could probably move 30, maybe even 100. That's easy. Then focus on the brick. Focus on the small thing. If 3 mile walk is too hard, do a 30-foot walk to start out. Hit that 30 feet and say, good, and tomorrow I'm going to go 32 and 33 and 35. But constantly work on yourself, like Epictetus said, and find that joy in your own improvement. So let's get that won't category of getting better is too hard off the table. That excuse has been destroyed. So we're getting down to a couple more here. So a study came out a couple of years ago of what the most common response is for younger people dealing with depression, anxiety, maybe socially unaccepted behaviors, things like that. And it was, I just am who I am. That is the biggest bogus statement. Trying to be kind here. The biggest bogus statement that you can make, and throws you heavily into the I won't category. I just rather be who I am. I'd rather be depressed. I'd rather be anxious. I'd rather be reclusive. I'd rather be, and I'm not talking about wanting to have moments of solitude. Absolutely. I think that's an important thing. But where I'm not going to go out, I'm not going to be part of society, I'm not going to contribute, I'm not going to do what Marcus Aurelius says and be part of the humankind out there to help brothers and to throw kindness out there. I'm just going to be who I am because it's who I always was. Well, Uncle Musonius, which I love to call him because I feel like he is that uncle that gives you advice that sometimes at first doesn't make sense, but then when you listen to it later, you're like, actually, he was right on. So Musonius Rufus says, in the majority of other things, we address circumstances not in accordance with the right assumptions, but mostly by following wretched habits. So our circumstances that come up, the bad things we have to deal with, we see them in the wrong way, and we link them to the bad habits we have. He goes on to say, since all that I've said is the case, the person in training must seek to rise above so as to stop seeking out pleasure and steering away from pain. And that was that last part that really got me. Steering away from pain. I just rather be who I am because the rest of it is just too hard. It's too complicated. It's too much. I'm going to steer away from that and just stay stagnant. And that's it. So Is there somebody in your life that came to help you out in a time maybe you were in depression, anxiety, that you weren't expecting? And I know this is kind of a deeper question you have to think about for a second, probably, but somebody you weren't expecting that came and helped you out at some point where you were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. They steered me back in the right direction. Do you have anybody in your life like that you could think of?
Maybe when I was younger. I think now, or as an older adult, not really. But I think I probably didn't have too much of that because it was always, I had such a supportive family, went to a really good church. And so I don't think I ever got to that point. I had people that were always just constantly uplifting and encouraging. And as a believer, I feel like God was always putting people in my life, whether it was somebody I knew really well or somebody that I didn't know too well, but I felt like God had always led people in my life to just kind of keep pushing me forward. And so I never really got that deep, but
Okay.
but I've definitely been there for people in that situation.
And you've tried to steer them back
And
to
I tried
it,
to redirect them, yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that I love that phrase, just steering away from pain. When you're in a car and you're driving, there's somebody sitting next to you, and maybe you're looking at them or you weren't paying attention or something, and there's a bump in the road, and they reach over and grab the steering wheel just instinctively to correct the car while you're still holding on to the wheel. That's what I think about of steering back into the situation. You're trying to drive away from it as fast as you can, and somebody comes along and says, no, come back over here. Let's face this head on. Let's get through this together. That could be a friend, a family member, a coworker. It could be professional help. It could be a doctor, psychologist. It could be a counselor at school. It could be a teacher, a fellow student. But look for those people who don't want to see you as who you are now, but want to see you as better and will help you out. And I'm not talking about people that are overstepping boundaries and that are constantly bothering you. And no, those people have their own issues to deal with. But if somebody is trying to help you, if somebody is volunteering to give their time to say, no, you don't have to just be this. I want to help you out. Don't push them away. Let them take over the wheel for a while. Let them help to drive you in the right direction. Because instead of just saying, I'd rather be who I am, say, I could be something so much greater than what I am. And we have the beautiful Stoic quote of, if you wait to be great tomorrow when you could be great today, right now, you can make the choice to better your life. And so let's take that excuse of, I'd just rather be who I am, and throw it off the table. Because it's a won't thinking. Not a woke thinking, a won't thinking. I'm starting something new right now, won't thinking. So anyways, I won't do it because I want to be who I am. We'll take that off the table. I want to get down to our last one here. And I guess for just a second, I want to get a little bit serious here. And I mean, we're having a good conversation. But when you get to the point where you don't feel like you want to live anymore, if you've ever felt that yourself or been around somebody who's experienced it or have had to go through it, when you get to that point, you have to pause for a second and say, is there something greater here that I'm missing? Because leaving is the most selfish thing that anybody can do. And I know you've all heard that, and that's just a saying, and you leave behind so many people and situations and pain, and goes back to that thinking of, I'm not important enough to do this. But when you say, I give up, when you get to that point, that is when you really have to look inwardly to provide yourself with help to get out of that moment. How do you provide yourself with help? You seek professional help. You call a hotline if you need to. You can call a hospital if you need to. You can call a police station if you need to. You can call 911. Anywhere that you can reach out and say, okay, this is my last chance. I'm giving up on myself. Reach in, grab your heart, squeeze it for all it's worth, and give yourself that chance to find help. From Epictetus here, if you want to do something, make a habit of it. If you don't want to do that, then don't. But make a habit of something else instead. If you want to make a habit to get better, great. But if you don't want to, at least make a habit of seeing the worth in yourself. At least make it a habit of saying, yeah, I'm not great right now and I really don't want to be and I don't want to change right now, but I know that I'm important and someday I'm going to be there. Change your thinking. Because if you don't and you go down a dark way, there might not be a path back. So we have to change our thinking, and that's what the beauty is of Stoicism. That is what the joy is of Stoicism. That's what the beauty is of faith. That's what the beauty is of psychology. So we want to make sure that we are steering ourselves into the right direction, into the right path. Our time is almost up. Do you have any comments that you want to say about any of this, or anything that you want to throw out as a final message to anybody that might be struggling with depression or anxiety or is in a won't mindset for this?
I think you laid it out pretty good there. Just, don't ever put yourself in a position where you're alone, and reach out to the people who are, available and there for you. Yeah.
That's really good advice. I want to take something really quick. You said, don't ever put yourself in a place where you're alone. That can be mentally, but also actually physically too, where you're alone get out with people. Get out in a group. Go places where there are people, where you can watch, where you can see people smile, where you can see people laugh, where you can see people that themselves have dealt with depression, anxiety, and pulled themselves out of it. When I was in one of my deepest times, when I started going to the gym, and I didn't really know how to work out the right way or do the right things, but I went there and I would get on the treadmill, and there'd be people in there laughing and joking, and I felt part of a community. And then pretty soon I was talking to people there, and they were talking to me, and I felt like I belonged, and I had a place to go. And that's not because, and it came from me not saying I won't do it or I can't do it. It was saying I will try. I will find the strength to do it. And thank goodness I did, because those people really helped lift me up. And of course I had some family and some friends that really stepped up for me. But that's very good advice. Don't be lonely. Don't put yourself in those situations.
Yeah, that was key for me. Honestly, I think that's why I never really got to that really deep part, was because I made sure to be surrounded by other people, and that's honestly what helped me get out of those moments.
Very good. Final thought. Thank you guys for listening. We're hitting our time here. A final thought is that there is so much joy in talking to yourself. If yourself is equipped with things like Stoicism, with things like faith, with things like psychology, where you can stop and meditate for a moment, get your journal out and write to yourself, this has been a horrible day. I don't know why I'm dealing with this. I don't know why I feel the way I do. And talk yourself through it. Look for the positives. People try to help you, walk towards them. Don't walk away from them. Get out of bed in the morning. You can sleep later. But like Aurelia said, I want to sleep, but you've already slept enough. So get out of bed. Make that big, important step. But go from saying, I can't do this, past saying, I won't do this, to the point where you say, I can do this. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate it. This is 60 Seconds of Stoicism. You see our memes. They're all over the place. They're on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and they're getting a following that's great. Thank you guys for all of that. We truly appreciate it. If you have any topics that you want to see for future shows where we can take the view of Stoicism or faith or psychology and address those, please let us know. You can leave them in the comments, or you can leave them on one of our social media platforms. But until next time, guys, we want to always use our intelligent mind to help with our intelligent health. Thank you all. We appreciate you.